Council meeting for August 22nd. Let's see. We have a moment of silence this evening. If everyone could take a moment. Thank you. All right, and everyone who is willing and able to stand, please, with pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have a presentation this evening. Our third quarter employee. If I could ask Nicholas Lawrence and K-9 Officer Nitro to come forward to the podium. I see your dog. I see it's just you.
He's in the car.
Okay, he's in the car. Okay. Okay. Right. All police officers are entrusted to uphold the law and to keep the community safe. This is an important responsibility each time they wear the badge. For the past 11 years, Officer Nicholas Lawrence has represented the Maitland Police Department with a faithful commitment to his duties. He is recognized among his peers as professional, reliable, hardworking, and knowledgeable. To others, he is an attentive public servant who shows great pride for the community. Officer Lawrence recently focused his efforts on increased calls for assistance in a West Maitland neighborhood. He stepped up patrols, leading to 10 different arrests and improved safety for residents. Officer Lawrence adopted additional responsibilities to work with the police K-9. He and his new partner, Nitro, trained for months to begin service together in January. Lawrence changed his professional and personal life to support Nitro and to take the dog into his home. This responsibility required Lawrence to relocate from an apartment to a house with a fenced-in backyard. The K-9 team creates a new law enforcement tool for our city. It also adds a new chapter in Officer Lawrence's exemplary career. For this, the City of Maitland is proud to recognize Officer Nicholas Lawrence as Employee of the Quarter for the third period of 2022. Congratulations, Officer Lawrence. Okay, we are going to move on to the public hearings. Our first public hearing this evening is on the ordinance amending the plan development, Maitland Concourse North, Lot 1, petition 2021-03. Dan? I'll read the title.
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending the official zoning map, a part of Article 1 of the Maitland Land Development Code, as amended by Ordinance 1396, previously Chapter 21, by changing the zoning classification of a property generally located north of Maitland Boulevard and west of Maitland Avenue, further described herein, from plan development to plan development, approving a conceptual development plan for Lot 1 of Maitland Concourse North, providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Lori. Dan, could you introduce the item, please?
Absolutely. Good evening, Council. So again, this is the public hearing and action meeting for the Maitland Concourse North Lot 1 PD. The property is located on the north side of Maitland Boulevard, and the request is to do a plan development to amend the zoning to allow for 50 to 75,000 square feet of non-residential uses on Lot 1 of the Maitland Concourse North. Also to add retail, office, restaurant, full service, and quick service restaurant, and one drive-through. And I'll go into that a little bit into detail. So the property, again, located on the north side of Maitland Boulevard, the plan was originally approved as the Poloni plan as part of the overall Maitland Concourse North PD. Lot 1 and 2 were known as the Poloni plan, with the typical suburban subdivision typical suburban retail store, I can't speak tonight, with the buildings pushed to the back of the road, parking lot up front with an out parcel at the corner. So what is being proposed tonight is a PD amendment to modify that ordinance 1303. The main changes here, they're wanting to add one drive-through restaurant or one drive-through establishment and rearrange the site orientation, the building orientation, to shift the buildings closer to the road. What's not changing in this PD that's already approved in 1303 is that the building area, the total square feet, the minimum open space, the maximum impervious surface, setbacks, maximum building height, permitted uses, minimum perimeter buffers, landscape requirements, and the conditions of approval that were already applicable to Lot 1. None of those are being proposed to be changed with this application. The property came for you, the applicant came back in February of 2021 to do a comprehensive plan amendment, a future land use amendment, to allow for a drive-through restaurant or drive-through use as part of that property. Council approved that on February 28th with the conditions that it's limited to one drive-through establishment at a maximum of 5,000 square feet and located on the western 300 feet. There also is a condition that it would revert back to drive-through establishments being a prohibited use if a planned PD amendment didn't come forward that was reasonably consistent with the plan that they showed you that night on February 28th. And then it was submitted on the November 29th, but came back to you on February 28th as modified by staff through the review. So the initial plan that you guys saw had 3 drive-throughs, and it had this layout here. What is proposed for you tonight is a little bit different layout. So they got rid of 2 of the drive-throughs, and I'll kind of walk you through. They got rid of the drive-through up here, got rid of the drive-through here, expanded the community area there where the gazebo is, enlarged that, relocated the dumpsters to make more green area here. The parking lot here changed to now a community gathering spot with outdoor dining and play area and things like that, and enhanced sidewalk. So this is the preliminary development plan that's before you tonight. These are also the elevations that are proposed as part of this development. Same architecture that did the original Poloni plan, same architect that did the Trilago apartments as well. So keeping along that same style and theme. So again, the Poloni plan, I've got a comparison here between the Poloni plan and the proposed plan for you tonight. So this was the Poloni plan with the open space and the sidewalks and pedestrian as well as vehicular connections. The revised plan before you tonight, more green space, more pedestrian connectivity, and less vehicular connectivity into the site to maintain and manage the traffic flow. So in summary, the proposed plan compared to the Poloni plan has an additional 0.18 acres of the open space gathering spot area, and that was between those 2 buildings. The sidewalks have increased from 1,800 square feet linear feet, to 3,300 linear feet plus or minus. And the landscape area went from 1 acre to 1.45 acres. So they've increased both the pedestrian connectivity and the green space, as well as added more of a gathering spot and a sense of place. So putting that all together, this kind of completes the picture of the Maitland Concourse North. We've got 2 lots left remaining to develop, and action so far to date, back in February 28th, Council approved that comprehensive plan amendment to allow that single drive-through up to 5,000 square feet on the western 300 feet. On July 6th, DRC unanimously recommended approval of this proposed PD, and on July 21st, P&Z unanimously recommended approval of this PD. And on August 8th, Council introduced the ordinance and set tonight as the public hearing and action date. So staff is recommending that Council adopt the ordinance amending the PD and associated conceptual development plan. And I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is here to answer any questions if you have any for them as well.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for you?
No, I just saying that I like this. Looks a lot better than way better than the preliminary plan, and much better than what they brought to us at first. I love the more green space, more places for people to, get together at and sit out and enjoy themselves. So, good job.
Okay, let's go to the public hearing. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this issue. If anyone would like to be heard, please come forward.
Okay, Dale McDonald, 108 Tangelo Court. This was in the form of comments. This is a question. Dan, if you could clarify for this poor knucklehead, Florida grad, exactly what quick service restaurants are.
Quick service restaurants are your typical, like your Moe's or your Jimmy John's, where it's dine-in, but it's quick service. It's not a sit-down full with a waiter coming to you and doing all that stuff. That's what you typically hear is a quick service restaurant.
So those that you just mentioned all have seating,
All that, I'm sorry?
and they all have interior seating.
Absolutely, yes.
So help me understand the distinction between basically a restaurant and a quick service restaurant.
Again, a quick service is more of like a Subway or a Moe's, where you order at the counter and you go and sit down. Whereas a typical restaurant, you have a waiter come to you, you have a waiter taking your order. It's usually a longer experience rather than a quick service. You can get in and out 20, 30 minutes. Restaurant, you're typically there an hour, depending on the restaurant.
All right, that answers my question. Thanks.
Anybody else from the public want to be heard? Okay, we'll bring it back up to council. Is there any discussion on this further, or should we have a motion on this?
I'll make the motion we don't have the sheet with me, but I will make a. Yeah, you have
I'll
a sheet.
actually make a motion
There you go. Go
to
ahead.
adopt
I'll
an
second.
ordinance, to adopt an ordinance amending the plan development and associated conceptual development plan for Maitland Concourse North, Lot 1, petition 2021-03 as presented.
Thank you.
No, I have my sheet. Second.
Okay, Lori, can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Warzel,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison.
Aye. Okay. We will move on to the second ordinance. That one is amending chapter 4, 5, and 6, and sunsetting the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. Lori, can you please read the ordinance title?
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending chapters 4 through 6 of the Maitland Code of Ordinances, to sunset the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, providing for an appeals process regarding the Florida Building Code, the Florida Fire Prevention Code, and a standard unsafe building abatement code, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Mark, you're going to introduce the item, please?
Yeah. Yes, just briefly, as we've discussed over the last several months, due to the lack of being able to have a full board at the BAA, the fact that there hasn't been a requested appeal for the last 10 or 12 years to go to the BAA, the fact that in order to meet requirements of the fire code, the board had to be made up of very particular people with very specific backgrounds that our board didn't meet. We discussed sunsetting the board and allowing the state processes to take place, to allow appeals to go directly to the State Fire Marshal's Office or the Florida Building Commission. This ordinance accomplishes those tasks and allows those appeals to either go straight to one of the boards, or if there's an appeal to one of our lesser technical codes, to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Does anyone have questions for Mark? Then we will open the public hearing on this issue, and we will close.
I'll make a motion to adopt an ordinance amending chapters 4 through 6, sunsetting the Board of Adjustment and Appeals and providing for an appeals process defined by the state statutes and city code as presented.
I'll second it.
That's still your thunder?
No. Well, yes, but it's okay.
Sorry.
So we'll get you on the next one.
We have one more.
Lori, can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel,
Aye.
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye. Thank you. All right, the third ordinance with lively dance, amending chapter 11 and 18, Fort Maitland Boat Park, boat trailer parking. Lori, if you could read the ordinance, please.
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending chapters 11 and 18 of the Maitland Code of Ordinances to provide for paid boat trailer parking and general parking enforcement at Fort Maitland Park, providing for findings, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, and Mark, can you introduce this one as well, please?
Yes, ma'am. At the August 8th City Council meeting, the council introduced this ordinance regulating boat trailer parking at Fort Maitland Park. The ordinance detailed the fee schedule for parking, the means of identifying Maitland residents, annual pass holders, the means of collecting parking fees, and fines for illegal parking. And also addressed an adjustment of the hours of Fort Maitland Park to make them coincide with our other park hours. After discussion at that meeting, it was determined that the parking fees, the means of collection, and requirements for notice should be contained in a resolution to provide a little more flexibility for change in the future. Additionally, it was suggested that language be added to the ordinance to make it illegal to use a parking permit that's not associated with the owner of the Maitland annual boat pass. So what we've done is moved those requirements, the fee, the means of collection, and notification requirements to a resolution that's later on the agenda. Added the language that was requested at the last meeting to this, making it illegal to use a parking permit that's not associated with the annual boat pass. So I think we've touched on everything, and I think it's ready for adoption.
Okay. Sorry I'm late, folks. Hearing all that me. Does anybody have any questions of one?
No, I talked to Mark earlier and he answered all my questions for me.
Okay. Let's open the public hearing on this. Does anybody from the public like to address us on the Fort Maitland parking? Seeing none, let's close the public hearing. And if there's any further discussion, we can have it, or somebody.
Well,
make a
John,
motion?
I'll tell you what I'd like to do. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the attached amending ordinance, amending Fort Maitland boat parking requirements as presented.
I'm feeling a little torn by this. I can't. Is this the last we're going to see of this for a while? Okay. We have a motion.
I will second.
A motion is second. Laura, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Wurzel,
An enthusiastic aye.
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Mayor Lyons.
Aye. Okay. We have that done. Old business, Mark, is there any old business to report?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody on council like to remove any items from the consent agenda? There's a lot on there this evening.
I'd like to remove 7 just for discussion.
Move number 7.
Let's skip the discussion.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody else like to remove anything? Okay, number 7 will be taken up at as the second part of our decision this evening. And is there anybody from the public who has any comments on items 2 through 13?
Excluding 7.
Excluding 7. Because we'll discuss that later.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I would. As soon as I get my act together here, I can tell you what's numbers.
Okay.
And that may take a while, because I left my actual agenda copied out.
All right, well,
So I'm winging it.
We will
Well, I got
answer.
one here, I just hadn't had them highlighted, but thank you. So 7's been pulled down?
Yes.
All right. We have, okay, John, I'm sorry.
That's all right. We wanted to let you get going.
Yeah, this is an old guy problem. Was our compressed work schedule on?
It is part of the consent agenda, yes.
It's on the agenda also?
It is on, yes, it's part of the consent agenda, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to pull that down.
Number 11. 11, Dale.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so that would have to be done by somebody on council.
Oh, I'm
Are
sorry,
you-
I apologize.
You want to have comments on it, or do you want to ask one of us to pull it?
Oh, I always got comments, John.
All right.
I'm not eligible to pull down 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're eligible, talk about it.
And so that will not be discussed publicly, so the consent agenda goes.
That's correct.
All right. Again, apologize for my lack of preparation here. Thank you.
You don't want us to talk about 11?
I always
Yeah, you can
want to
make
talk-
comments.
You can
It's
do
it's a
it.
compressed, it's a
Oh.
four-day.
Okay, yes, great, thank you very
Yeah.
much. Compressed work schedule, a 4-day work schedule is a wonderful sounding thing. And I think that we have, as seen in other municipalities, that be well received. Now, being an old real estate guy, somebody closes on a house on Friday and they can't go turn the water on. It's a problem, okay? That's just me. And the flip side of the coin is, are we in such, have we researched this and how it works for other folks? Has that been able to be discussed publicly here? About the relative advantages or disadvantages? And I'm sure there are both. So I'm sure that police and fire aren't leaving on Friday. So, at least I'm afraid that they won't. Dave and Will would do that to us. But so these are things that, is this such a pressing issue that it needs to be, without more conversation, trying to figure out what the advantages and disadvantages might be for the city of Maitland? Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Is there any other public comment on any items on the consent agenda this evening? Items 2 through 13? Okay, excluding 7. Let's close the public period and let's, Mark, since it was raised, if you wouldn't mind, and I don't want to get into a long discussion about it, but we have had discussions about it, about what the pros and cons of the schedule would be. And I don't think, certainly it's not going to end up with any less service to Maitland residents, and it is I think it's kind of a work-life balance boon to a lot of people, and we're losing people to other areas who might offer those types of things. But certainly the police and fire are going to continue doing what they do.
Absolutely.
It does look like Public Works would be, 6 a.m. to 4:30? And except Friday, so they wouldn't be there on Friday now. So I would imagine all our contractors are still, that this doesn't apply to them. To the extent we have contractors who do median work for landscaping companies or whoever, I mean, their work schedule is dictated by their boss, not by us. Is that correct? Is there anything else that you think is
No, well, just that we have done extensive research on what other cities have done and used them as models. We've also discussed this with our employees extensively because we didn't want to make a change that would adversely affect our employees. It was widely accepted as something that would be a positive here. And as you mentioned, it is a great recruiting tool. Since the Great Resignation put on by the pandemic, this generation of workers is looking for a little bit more flexibility in schedule, where local governments are typically not able to compete with the private sector on the salary front. We can't compete on the job security front, and certainly to be able to provide some flexibility, provide that work-life balance. So this is just one of several things we're going to be doing over the next couple of years to try to remain competitive, keep those positions filled, get them filled, and then keep them filled. And I think it's going to be good for everybody.
So this would affect like permitting, all that, right? I mean, have you talked to contractors and people that come in, and is this going to cause?
The key is going to be education. That's why we're giving ourselves a lead time here, these 3 months of education. When we talk to cities like Stanford and Castleberry that have done this, they just put the word out of what's going to be happening, and how it's going to work. From a permitting standpoint, we've transitioned to mostly online permitting, so a lot of that's done electronically. We have contract inspectors, that's a contract service. They can still continue on Fridays. So there's not a lot of impact, but the key is getting word out to the residents, to get word out to the contractors, just to make sure we have a good public outreach campaign to let people understand what we're doing and how we're doing it. And it does expand the hours that are available here at City Hall too. I mean, we'll be open from 7 to 6, so if somebody needs to take care of business before they go to work or after they get off their normal work day, we'll be here open for business for them.
Is there thought of easing? This is one of those things that I would imagine once you do it, it is going to be hard to undo it. I would imagine. I mean, once you do this, I would think so. I just didn't know if there was thought on making sure that what?
On undoing it?
No. I'm saying once you do it, right? Once we go to 4 days, to go back to 5, if we decide that it's not working, going back to 5, I think would be challenging. I think there'd be significant pushback. So I just want to make sure that we fully vetted that moving to 4 is going to work before we. And is there a way to ease into? I'm just
No, I
thinking
think-
ahead.
I don't
If
think-
you've covered all the bases.
I think we've covered all the bases.
It is what it is.
Between my department heads talking directly to their staff, with Liberty doing her work, researching what other communities have done to be able to put a policy together that addresses all aspects of this. It's been very well researched, and I think we're on good solid ground here.
And Mark, would I be correct in saying that there's always somebody on call for emergencies and stuff in public works and
Always.
there's
I understand there's a lot of discussion for a consent agenda without taking it off, but this was discussed at public hearing previously. Whether it was under discussion, I've been trying to figure it out and I can't find it, but I know that we discussed this publicly before, and I think it's on consent because there wasn't a lot of discussion at that time. But when we had our priority council meeting about what our priorities were, one of the biggest complaints, which I'm sure is true across all cities, was retention and/or acquisition of employees. And so I know that that's part of the council's consideration.
Okay. Well, we've vetted the consent agenda. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I will second.
Moving, of course, you mean moving 7 to discussion.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about something.
She said that.
Oh, all right.
With the exception of number 7. With the exception of number 7.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Lori, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Alders. Aye. Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Mayor Lance.
Aye. Okay, now is our public period where anybody in the public can address the council on any item that's not actually on the agenda. So if anybody feels moved to address us on any item, please speak now.
Good evening. I'm Audra Bussey. I reside at 2006 Mohegan Trail in Maitland. I'd like to just bring your attention to something, I've got some pictures and some concerns. Crosswalk safety here in Maitland around our schools for Lake Sebelia, Domrick, as well as Maitland Middle School. Last week, the Maitland Police Department moved a crosswalk guard due to the epidemic of labor shortage, and that identified a serious deficiency of appropriate signage around our crosswalks. I presented to you, there's 7 in particular that have absolutely no appropriate signage whatsoever indicating that there's a crosswalk, and then the other 6 with inadequate signage. And so what we'd like to do is just to bring this to your attention. I know that the end of the fiscal year is coming up, and perhaps there's some extra funding in the budget that we could address to get these signs, especially these areas where the children are crossing. We have a very pedestrian-friendly neighborhood for both Lake Sebelia and Domrick, and I'm very concerned about vehicular traffic not having appropriate signage where these kiddos are traveling in the crosswalks. Specifically, there are 2 crosswalks where you have done a wonderful job putting in new sidewalks and beautiful new crosswalks for the babies to get across safely. But unfortunately, it wasn't finished because there were no crosswalks added. And also, as you can see, that's the biggest one is Mohican Trail at Thistle, which is on the north side of Domrick and Maitland Middle School. On the west side of Domrick Elementary, there is inadequate signage there as well in the crosswalk. And because we don't have crossing guards due to shortage, signage is even more important. And we also compared it over to Lake Sebelia, and while they have significantly better signage, I know Sandsburg is an area of concern, there really should be flashing crosswalks for those kiddos as well to cross safely at those crossing guards. And so I know we can't afford crossing guards. I know that this has been an area of concern. We talked about vehicular traffic in the Domrick and Lake Sebelia neighborhoods around our schools. We want these kiddos to be able to ride their bicycles safely, but we really need your help in addressing the lack of appropriate signage at our crosswalks in our schools. Thank you so very much.
Great work on this, by the way.
Thank you. And by the way, all of the solutions are solar, so we don't have to do any conduit work. So the signs that are there could be retrofitted, or we can just purchase solar signs to go ahead and move forward to keep our children safe. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Buston. All right.
Dale McDonald, 108 Tangelo Court, and yay for pedestrians. God, I said that before up here a few times, haven't I? My other comment was trying not to bring a stylistic complaint into the Lego model that's we're affectionately referred to as a Fort Maitland Park bathroom. Not real proud of that one. I'm guessing it's for $1.5 million plus. It's the best we could do. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Dale. Does anybody else like to address the public? Let's see, we'll address the council. Good evening.
Good evening, my name is Erin Baker. I reside at 900 Parliament Road in Maitland along with my husband and 3 children. At the beginning of the 2023 school year, just 12 days ago, we saw how crucial pedestrian safety is in our city. After the city vacated the crosswalk at the intersection that intersects the car line of Domrick Elementary and Maitland Middle, parents and students saw firsthand how dangerous it can be for students to walk or bike in our city. On an average morning, this crosswalk sees roughly 100 pedestrians cross the car line. With a crossing guard no longer manning the area and no signage added in the area when the city vacated the crosswalk, it is a huge liability for government agencies as well as a dangerous area for our children and pedestrians. Windermere High School sadly had to deal with a pedestrian accident last week. A student exiting the campus at dismissal was struck by a car also leaving the campus. These are very serious concerns. Because of amazing OCPS leadership, particularly our principal at Domrick Elementary, Ms. Permenter, an OCPS employee is now present daily, both to help with pedestrians crossing the area, as well as managing traffic flow so that cars do not back up onto Thistle Lane. To avoid such dangerous predicaments in the future, I come to you and respectfully ask that the city set aside additional funds and resources to ensure that our neighborhoods are safe for our children and are equipped to handle the large amounts of foot traffic in our city. Please partner with OCPS on this lead. Not only is this an investment for our children's safety, it is a responsible city move to make sure that our streets are equipped for pedestrians as we are all working towards creating a greener footprint as Maitland residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Would anybody else like to address the council this evening? All right. Seeing none, let's close the public period. Mr. Regentine, if I could ask you to comment just a little bit on the first and third items that we heard. I understand that there has been a study regarding
Yes, sir.
safety with regard to the schools and
Yes.
either ongoing or recently concluded.
Yes, we're completing it right now. 2 years ago, the State Department of Transportation changed their rules regarding signage in school zones. They mandated that every local government review school zone sign requirements under the new standard. As I think most of you remember, because you're here, we did that this year. We're just getting that study back to show where the upgrades are required in each school zone in the city, and that includes public and private. So over the next year, we'll be implementing that, changing out the signs to meet the new standards. So that's already in the works and included. So we will be doing that over the next year. Looks like the number might be big enough we'll have to bid it out, so it'll be a few months before we bid it out and get those back in and have the contractor start working, but that certainly is in our work plan. It's required to be done by 2024 throughout the state, so we're on track to meet that deadline.
Okay, thank you. And anything to do with, I guess, Ms. Bussey's concern mainly was flashing signs, not mainly, but it was partially flashing signs. Is that something that's part of the tool belt here? Or?
I have not seen the final study, so I don't know what is contained in it right now. The consultants are just wrapping it up, so we're going to be doing that review over the next couple of weeks.
Okay. All right. Well, let's close public hearing. Now we appreciate you all coming out this evening, and every little bit we get helps us put together. I mean, we've been partnering with OCPS for a long time, and it's in everybody's best interest that certainly our elementary schools are taken care of, as our middle schools and all the other schools as well. So it's an ongoing challenge for all of us, and that we all take it very seriously. So we'll keep charging ahead on that. Okay, so in the decision aspect of the evening, we are into the ordinance regarding land development code refinement. Dan, can you introduce that item for us? Oh, well, first let's hear the title. Yes.
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, amending the Land Development Code by amending section 2.5.3D3, waterfront structure permit procedure to remove a time limitation on the staff review and decision for these permits. Amending section 2.4.11, post-decision limitations and actions. Amending section 2.5.3K, post-decision limitations and actions, and section 2.5.4D2, types of appeals to establish a 15-day appeal process for waterfront structure permits. Amending section 3.3.5C, intensity and dimensional standards for downtown Maitland, exempting townhome dwelling from the first floor minimum height standards of 14 feet. Amending table 4.3.2E, accessory use and structure table to remove farmers markets as a listed accessory use. Amending section 4.3.40, outdoor seating, as accessory to an eating, drinking, and entertainment use standards to remove a prohibition of food preparation outside the enclosed principal building. Amending section 5.3.7, shoreline protection standards. Subparagraph C, water body setback in section 5.3.8 wetland protection standards. Subparagraph F, setbacks to exempt certain structures developed prior to the code update. Amending table 5.6.4, specimen tree replacement standards to change an inconsistent unit of measurement. Amending section 10.3.2 definitions to revise the definition of waterfront structures to remove an inconsistent reference to the shoreline protection area. Providing for codification, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Lori. Mr. Mathis, would you like to take it from here?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So this is basically an ordinance to refine the code. We knew after writing the new code, after writing 600 pages of code, we give it about 6 months, and then we take a look at it and see what's working and what's not, and how the reaction goes in real life practice. So what we bring for you tonight, after about 6 months of adoption, is a little refinement of things that are a little touch-ups. Some of them were staff Scrivener errors that we found. Some of them were what we were hearing from the community. And so I'll kind of walk you through. There's basically 7 amendments outlined in this. The first one is to restore portions of the waterfront structure permit process to go back to what was in the original code. And that was based on, the new code had a time where we would send out letters to the adjacent properties, which we're still doing that in the new code, but the new code says that we couldn't even act on it until 14 days after that went out. So we're moving that 14-day period, and we're putting the appeal period back to the 15 days that it was originally in the code, just to kind of help move things along and help be more friendly to the applicants and things like that. The second one is to create an exception for the first floor height for townhouses in downtown. So right now downtown, the ordinance says that all multifamily and all residential shall have first floor retail, which is a minimum height of 14 feet before you start putting in the apartments or the condos. Well, townhouses, it's because council and staff all alike didn't want residential on the first floor. Well, in townhouses, you do have residential on the first floor. Townhouses are allowed in downtown. So the problem came with, we have someone that's come in that's wanted to do some townhouses downtown, and making a 14-foot first story became very problematic once you start taking into consideration the building code requirements for stairwells and risers. And basically the stairwell is 7 inches high, 7 3/4 inches high by 10. So you're basically looking at 14 stories. You're looking at about 20 feet of stairs going out, which really eats into and makes it difficult to design a townhome project. The typical townhomes in Florida, the minimum height of a townhouse for the building code, minimum floor height is actually 7 feet. It's like 6 3/8 or something, but it's about 7 feet. But typically your townhouses that are built today, the average in Florida is about 9 to 10 feet for all the floors, just because of the design of them, and that's the desire of the residents. So what we're trying to do is accommodate that and lower it so it's more likely to build, and it won't look out of place if you had a 14-foot first floor and then a 7 or 9-foot second floor. So this came out of the request of a developer that's looking to do some townhouses downtown Maitland. The third one is to remove the farmer's market as a permitted accessory use on the west side. So right now the ordinance allows farmer's markets citywide as a permitted temporary use through their temporary use permit. But noticing on the west side, it was actually placed as a permitted accessory use as well. So we're just correcting that inconsistency and Scrivener's error and just making it all temporary use throughout the citywide. The fourth one is to remove a standard for outdoor seating standards that prohibit food preparation outside. We've had some requests from restaurants that saying they would like to do some outdoor, maybe it's a pizza kitchen or something like that to do outdoors. These types of uses are regulated by the health department, and it's better suited to be regulated by the health department, so we felt that it was just kind of overkill that we had it in there also. But where the problem came about is outdoor food preparation. The definition of the health department was very stringent. It basically said you couldn't even make tableside guacamole because you're preparing food outside. So talking to the health department, they said there's very different interpretations of that. So we felt it's best to just let the health department regulate that part and take it out of our ordinance. The fifth one is to provide an exemption of shoreline protection standards for wetland protection. So this came about as when we amended the code and put the wetland and shoreline protection at 50 feet. It was 25 prior to this. We put it at 50 feet. It created a lot of non-conforming uses, and we've had several people that wanted to reinvest in their home, do additions, and what the new ordinance would do would make it very difficult for them to do that. In order to comply, they would have to be very tall, skinny buildings that would look very out of character for the rest of the area around them, because most of them were built under that 25 foot. So the proposed ordinance here exempts a property that was platted and has a legally conforming structure on it, would still be allowed to stick to the 25, but all new undeveloped properties would fall into the 50. The sixth one is revising a tree replacement standard. We had misplaced the DBH and caliper, so we're just flipping it back to caliper as far as the measurements of a tree replacement. And the last one is editing the definition of waterfront structure. There was an incorrect reference in the definitions where we had accidentally put 15 feet instead of 25 feet, which is what it's supposed to be. So that outlines the ordinance changes that we're proposing, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dan. Does anybody have any questions for Dan?
How do you define townhome?
A townhome is a fee simple ownership, so you own the land as well as the...
And that's defined
Correct.
in our code?
It is.
Okay, I didn't see it. And that is, and we're making it clear, I mean, just, you're making the distinction there because you want it for fee simple ownership versus a rental community that could have that, or what is the thought process?
Correct. So if they did like condos, then you would still have to have the first floor, because in the condos you just own within the walls, you don't own the land itself. So townhouses, you own the land, owning the land, most people don't want to have a first floor commercial on the bottom floor of the townhouse.
There's still the requirement though that anything on Independence, we have a different rule on first floor residential than anything fronts Independence. Is that still the case, or did that change?
This would just be for downtown. Townhouses are permitted use in downtown. So I don't...
Didn't we change, I thought we had something about first floor residential that fronted.
I'd have to go back and take a look at that, but this ordinance proposes just for, because townhouses under the new code are allowed in downtown. Anywhere downtown, correct. Yeah, but I can go back and make sure that we have some language on Independence.
Okay. Because townhouse would then imply that there's nothing vertically above it. If you're saying that they would own the dirt unless they came up with some crazy land condo structure and then did townhomes. I mean, you're assuming that would just be then separate parcel somewhere in the downtown. Okay.
Correct.
And we're okay with that. I thought one of the reasons why we did the 14 feet was the thought that if it ever were to be, you're then essentially closing the door on it ever becoming anything but residential. I think that was one of the reasons. I don't know, John, you were...
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons, yes.
So, I mean, I just would be just thinking about this in the context of if it's on Independence or if it's on something that we hope to one day turn to potentially commercial when you do this and you don't have the floor height to then be able to have it convert to another use, a commercial use down the road. When you have that lower ceiling height, you essentially made it residential, and it's difficult to change. I think that was the logic of why that was there. Now, whether or not that's logic has changed or our evaluation of it has changed, but I think that's right. So I would be looking at this as far as if you're going to make it downtown wide, I would maybe look at where you don't want to do that if we want to potentially preserve the commercial nature of a certain area. That would be my suggestion. I mean, because I think that's what the justification was. Higher floor heights gave you the ability that as things got more commercial, and commercial uses could come in there, and that it wouldn't be just residential forever.
And I think actually it might have been also the other way around too. So if you require a 14-foot high first floor, it's not likely that it will be residential.
Right.
So, Dan, did this come about because of the potential for development over there by the bank?
Yeah, this is a different property. That is,
So a townhome is you own the owner resides there, and it owns
Correct.
the property, not just the building.
correct,
So-
you own a fee simple.
You own the dirt
Not-
underneath.
But that's not necessarily true, because it's fee simple ownership, but that doesn't necessarily prevent the fee simple owner from renting it out. So you could have fee simple
You
ownership,
could have-
and then it could
correct.
be, it could be a rental unit. So,
You're just talking about the difference between the land being appurtenant to the unit or versus the land actually being owned by the unit owner.
well, it's a common, I mean, it's condominium, you could have a 14-foot high building that was condominiumized, and the ground is a common element. I mean, it's sort of, I think the townhome thing is, in my opinion, is not I wouldn't consider that to be the main factor here, because you could condominiumize something looks like a townhome, which is, it's legally somewhat different, and sometimes, I'm not sure that you wouldn't, depending on the system, sometimes townhomes are worse, because townhomes then, like you said, they own the dirt, and depending on where it is, you might want to have an association that actually maintains the grounds outside the unit, other than each individual owner maintaining the grounds outside the unit. So, I don't know that, I don't know what you're talking about. It's sort of like we're thinking about this in the abstract. I'm sure you've looked at it and you're looking at it more something on a specific, so it's easier for you to kind of come around on. But I don't know that for me that the townhome distinction is what is dispositive on the issues. Is the driving, should be the driving force.
So Mike, is your concern generally that on Independence Lane and future Independence Lane, you wouldn't want to see anything that would be like less than 14 feet?
That was the original thought. I think our original thought and I don't know who brought it, who proposed it, but somebody's distinction, I think, back when we were doing the code was, hey, if you don't do 14 feet on a first floor, it'll always be, it can't be converted into retail or commercial later. I think that was that's my memory of it, something along those lines. And so there are probably places where if you're going to make this downtown wide, I would say, do we want to do that downtown wide? Or do you want to make this where this is somewhat more targeted to where there are, and clearly I think under our unified downtown zoning district, before we used to have, I don't know how many it was, 5, 4, whatever it was, different districts within the downtown district. And you could make those distinctions to say, okay, within these districts, you can allow this, whatever. Now that it's one unified district, I would just want to make sure that this fits district-wide, and there aren't certain places where we want to protect this.
And we can look at, if that's the direction, after the introduction, we can look at adding an exemption for along the Independence Lane, the future Independence North-South.
And I'm not, like I said, if you think this is okay, I don't think that forcing someone to do a townhome just to take advantage of this or to fit into this category makes it, to me, that it can be a condominium and get you to the same place, and it may actually function better or worse, I don't know. But I don't think just the townhome thing necessarily precludes it, one, from being rented, and two, from having the desired effect that you're looking for. So.
Right. And in townhomes, in my experience in townhomes, you have a series of units that come out the door, out on the ground level. People have gardens, they are maintaining that. There's an HOA that maintains the overall grounds, but you typically have your porch, your patio, your gardens, and it's typically a two-story, so you have residential on the ground floor, but I get your concern. Anything can be rented. A single-family house can be rented, so it's not a matter of rentership versus owner. But typically, townhouses are owned. They can't rent them. I think it's providing more options of having ownership style downtown. The one in question right now is not on Independence Lane. So I don't think it would be an issue if council wants it to be treated.
Well, I think I just would be sensitive to the areas that we want to protect for commercial. And I rented a townhome in Baldwin Park. So I rented a townhome in Baldwin Park. The individual unit owners maintained the grounds within their kind of courtyard.
Right.
And, I mean, the distinction was you have a shared wall agreement that deals with,
Still on the dirt.
you know, still the roofs and shared walls, things like that, but the grounds were, some of the grounds were maintained by the master association, things like that, but you had individual responsibility. So, anyway, I just, those are my thoughts.
So you go ahead.
What I was going to say, what I hear him saying as well is, I think it's clear of like the protections for Independence Lane, which are not relevant, I hear, to whatever has inspired this, but may be relevant in the future, which is, I think, prudent to point out. But also, what I think I hear is also some reticence to limit it to townhomes necessarily, if there's not a reason to limit it to townhomes, kind of on the other end of things. Like, so one end is potentially limiting it on Independence Lane, which I think, you know, you're reiterating, but also on kind of the flip side of opening it theoretically, or just the idea of does it need to be limited? If we can limit Independence Lane and kind of make sure that our vision is preserved and all the visions that came before mine, but also is there a reason why it needs to be limited to townhomes specifically, I guess?
I think you could get there by saying, if what you're saying is what we want to try to do is have it be owner-occupied stuff, you could do fee simple. I mean, if you just said something that was dedicated to fee simple ownership, I think gets you to, unless you think townhome gives you something else that I'm not thinking about, I'm not
Well,
sure.
I think condos,
What's that?
you own the condos, right?
Yeah, you could
Like
do
fee
it.
simple, but we still want the ground floor 14 foot on those, because that's, you typically with condos, you typically have a lobby area and a, you know, maybe a gym and things like that you find in apartments. You find those in condos as well, but in townhomes you don't.
Maybe.
The common
I mean,
areas.
there's condominiums that are done. Yeah, I mean,
If I can just make a suggestion, obviously this is a glitch fix for current situations that are impacting current people who actually want to make a current development. I would suggest that we move forward with the recommendation based on the fact that we actually have an actual situation that this is impacting directly right now. But we request, Dan, that you do further deliberations to try and address the issues that Mike is correctly and obviously bringing up based on past experience. And so I would just suggest that we move forward with this, but we also are conscious that we need to go back and kind of review the history of where we're at.
Hey, Dan, I'm going to jump in because I think I got to jump in. Question, and I'm looking at what goes on Ridgewood, you know, with the duplexes over there and redoing them, and then they sell the duplexes. So isn't that really just a townhome?
A duplex is basically two connected. Townhome
Right.
is, yeah, townhome is typically 3 or more, typically.
So do they have to follow? So they have to follow the same guidelines as a townhome
With respect to
to the 14 foot?
no, duplexes do not.
Okay. So if you have 2, it's a duplex. If you have 4, it's a town. 3 or 4 is a townhome. Okay, I guess this new one is. And with, you know, what Mike said, I'm kind of on board with that because, you know, we're looking at just, you know, he was just talking about the Independence area, but we don't know what 10 years is going to bring. You know, maybe another part of town gets to be the hot spot and, you know, and that turns in, those things are now 10, 15, 20 years later, they're kind of a retro cool thing to, you know, make it something different. So that's why I would kind of still support the 14 foot. And I guess my second question is, judging that 14 foot, is from where to where?
It's from the grade to the
From the grade?
slab.
From the floor plate?
It's been slab ceilings.
Florida statutes. A townhouse means a single-family dwelling unit not exceeding 3 stories in height, which is constructed in a series or group of attached units with property lines separating such units.
So no amount of how many it takes, it's not 2 or 3 or there's not an amount.
Each townhouse shall be considered a separate building and shall be separated from adjoining townhouses by the use of separate exterior walls, meeting the requirement for 0 clearance from property lines as required by the type of construction and fire protection requirements. Or shall be separated by a party wall, or may be separated by a single wall, meeting the more requirements, and then just continues on plumbing and duct work.
So Dan, we're looking at this and changing, we're looking to change, or you're asking us to look at changing this, but you don't give us the height. I mean, you were just sitting here talking 7 feet to 10, 12 feet. If you ask me 7 foot, that's way too small. You know, so what number are you asking us for?
We weren't asking for a number. The Florida Building Code minimum height for any habitable space is 7 feet. But the average around Central Florida is 9 to 10 foot per floor.
So that's the number, 9 or 10?
I'm not asking for a number. We're just saying eliminate the 14. If council would like to set a number, then yeah, I would recommend 9.
So this is not on independent. We would just, to be clear, this is not anything that, what you're doing to fix this for the current issue is not an Independence Lane or potential Independence Lane fronting project if we were to continue this on our road north-south.
The one in play right now is not on Independence Lane, either extension side.
Okay.
Can I ask then to Councilperson Hall Harrison's point, if we ask to go back to the drawing board on this particular point, how, if at all, that would affect whatever's going on with that particular developer?
It would, in the current developer, it would not affect him at all, because the code actually allows them to ask for a waiver from DRC for the minimum height, and they've already gotten their waiver. And what we were hearing is that we're going to get a lot of these waiver requests, so why not just change the ordinance?
Sure. So it's from a timing standpoint, if we want to make sure, if enough of us feel like it's worth perfecting, whatever that means to us, that that's not going to affect.
Correct.
Any other questions for Dan?
Oh yeah, I got it on some different stuff. So back to 14 again. But this is to do with the notice. It just went down. I guess we're taking off the part that says the 14 notification for, still booting up, there we go. 14 days after the notice in subsection D above has been mailed. So you're looking to take that off, but we're not looking to replace it.
No, we're not.
So, I mean, here's my question. So if, I put in an application, how long could that on-site inspection take? I mean, is this something that we're looking to say, well, it could be a month, it could be 2 months. I mean, until we get to it, there's no time limit. We're in no hurry to get out there.
Permits in our system have a 21-day review cycle. So what that language that we're taking out is saying that we couldn't even look at it for 14 days after we mailed the notices out. So we couldn't act on it. And so what we're saying is get rid of that so we can act on it within 3 days that it comes in and we can get out there and look at it. That's all that part is saying.
Okay. So you would get on it earlier, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. So I wanted to talk to you about the 25 feet also, and doing that. There's a reason why it was 50 foot from the normal high water elevation, because there's also a 100-year flood, a 100-year high water mark, and that's where that is. So that is where the 100-year high is. So by putting that 25 in there, now you're, just so you know, that could be potential flooding.
the setback is 25 foot from the normal high water.
Right, from the normal high water. What I'm saying is why we did 50 feet is because, and that gives you buffer for the 100-year high water. That's your normal high, there's a 100-year high also. So, you know, like, you get the crazy storms, you know, once every 100 years or whatever it is. Same reason we make retention ponds, right, for that reason. So that just protects those homes from any flooding issues. So I'm just kind of worried we put them into a flooding situation.
And where this came about is we have had several requests for people that want to reinvest or do something to their home. And looking at it, it would make, and I don't have a percentage, but this makes a lot of the homes non-conforming. I would guess to say the majority of homes are non-conforming if we go from 25 to 50.
Oh, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, do we have to worry about anything, Cliff? Like, is there anything that the city should say, listen, by building in this area, just know that there's a 100-year, you know, there's a 100-year high water mark?
If you're asking me, should we provide a warning, I'm going to insanely counsel you no.
Okay.
And the reason why that may seem simple to do, but why it's bad, is because recent history has shown those marks move a lot faster than you think. And I have a perfect example that's been all over the news. My subdivision is in Gotha, and on Hempel, the house that is at the end of the street that was supposed to be nowhere near the 100-year floodplain, which is why they got a building permit maybe 25 or 30 years ago, is underwater and is in a big lawsuit with the county because they were told when they pulled the permit they were nowhere near. Then the turnpike came through and other things happened, and now that mark is substantially above where their house is, which explains why they're underwater and why they're in a lawsuit with the county. So my suggestion is the floodplain will be what it will be. Let the buyers and the builders look out for it and beware.
Thank you. That's just all I wanted to make sure of. All right, that's it. Thank you.
All right, let's open the public period. Anybody from the public like to address any of these issues? Now's your time.
Yeah, Dale McGowan, 108 Tangelo, and Mr. Mayor, you and I and Cliff remember these days. An hour's worth of remembering these discussions. And I was actually an advocate at the time of being higher than 14 feet. Because we wanted the flexibility, or we believed that we needed the flexibility to be able to have an evolution of a downtown or an Independence Lane frontage. Building across the street, 14 feet, okay? And that allowed us minimally, in my view, personally, to be able to accommodate the evolution of whatever ground floor development may need to be. And you're all aware of Baldwin Park, and you're aware of the 20-foot top of floor plate to bottom of floor plate clearance that allows a maximum amount of flexibility to be able to do theoretically 2 residential units there in that same space. And of course, easily the drop ceiling allows you to do what does go on in Baldwin Park every day. And it will evolve over time. We've got people that we've got an approved project of the Wells Fargo drive-throughs over here. Have a for sale sign in front of it. Newly installed for sale sign. Don't know why. But the point is, yeah, I don't know the seller, I don't know the particulars, I do know the particulars of the approval. I don't know why they may not be doing it. Townhomes, and sure, we would love to have, I believe, I think we could all agree, more owner-occupied product in our downtown. And the pride of ownership that comes with that. Now, at the same time, I want to be able to have the council left with the flexibility to evolve into what the market may decide is appropriate, because the market's always right. We just think we are sometimes. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Does anybody else like to address the council on this ordinance? Seeing none, let's close the public period. And if there's not any further discussion, the motion will be in order.
You know what, well, I'll have a little discussion. I think, you know, it goes to, I don't know, That's pretty contentious, is the 14-foot change in that, especially changing it 5 feet to 9 feet. That's a big difference. I'd like to have some discussion if anybody's in favor of it, they think, or if they have any concerns of changing that, or.
Dan, let me just ask, so you said that that one is not needed because you just think we should do it because you think people are gonna ask for more of the waivers, right? Because right now, a project could happen, but they have to seek a waiver.
Correct.
Is that what you said?
Correct.
So this isn't one that needs to happen necessarily to accommodate something that's held up in the works due to a land development code issue. This is just something you're anticipating.
Correct, because of, yes.
So if this is something that warrants further analysis, we could table that part of it, and you could look into that one potentially further, and we could fix the rest of it. That's just
Is the desire more to protect the Independence Lane north and south, or just get rid of the whole 14 foot?
Again, you're looking at this with a specific project, so like I said, I'm sure you've studied this, you don't see any problems, so we're looking at it code-wide, not with respect to this specific project. So I think we're coming at it from a different context. So I would say that the blanket rule, as I think maybe is what we're having trouble with, whereas you isolated it in this one specific project doesn't give you any problems. I think we're looking at it though downtown-wide, and we're thinking, where could commercial go that now we're putting residential that maybe we don't want to see?
Well, I think that, yeah, you raise a good point, Mike. But if you look around at the different areas that we've been hearing about, whether it's Baldwin Park or Winter Park, you do want, I think, townhomes in that area close to your commercial development. So I think about Park Avenue and then the backside of it there's all kinds of townhomes around here on Interlochen or wherever. You want somebody with walking distance to these areas. Or same with Baldwin Park. I mean, you have townhomes that are, you were probably able to walk down to the Publix or the Five Guys or wherever. I mean, so yeah, you do, I think, want that mix in there. You don't want to your idea about protecting Independence Lane, I think, is a good one. I don't know what other arteries like that there would be that you would want to keep from extending a townhome onto, but I think Independence Lane would be minimal. And maybe that needs some more thought.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm not trying to, I'm sure you've looked at it, so but I think Independence, maybe Packwood, I mean, those are the ones that jump out, right, Horatio, whatever, but I mean, you can look and come back, but if this is needed, then we need it. If it's something that you just thought, hey, let's take care of it, maybe this is something that requires a little bit more analysis. That would just be mine.
So yeah, so if this is a kind of a glitch bill, this may be more of a, sounds to me like it's getting a little thorny, so maybe we should, just for ease of passing what you need to get passed, maybe we can give this a little more thought since there's nothing else going on. If anybody wants to make the motion, we'll pull this out, or we can wait and approve it and then on first reading and then pull it on the second reading. And I don't think that would be a problem getting the high sign from the city attorney.
Yeah, I think we might come back with something by then too, so that's a good idea.
Do you have a thought, Laura?
No, I'm just saying, because I always need my tutoring, that's what we did with Fort Maitland Park, that we approved and then we came back on the next reading and there were changes made, which we'll discuss in a minute, but.
Yeah, you can, I think you can, and Cliff can expound on this, I mean, you can change, on the first reading, you're just introducing the ordinance, and as long as you have to advertise it, so long as you don't really change the meat of it.
Yes.
Your advertising is.
And they use the title as the meat. And so if the title says an ordinance adjusting the land development code, setting standards, whatever the title says, and that's what you're still doing on the second reading, the fact that it changes different standards doesn't matter because you told the public we're going to be changing the standards. If you're interested in that issue, come talk to us. So that's what the Supreme Court has said, probably 20 years ago. So that's the rule. Basically, if you have to change the title because of something new, then you do a do-over. If you don't have to change the title, you're good.
So I'm good with that. So you ready?
Yeah, sure.
I'll move to introduce the proposed land development code refinement ordinance and set the public hearing and action date for September 12, 2022.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Wurzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just for clarification, is the expectation of the council that when this ordinance comes back, that 14-foot stipulation is not in it, versus you're going to take it out as second reading? But before Maitland, I went ahead and changed the ordinance based upon your direction and pulled things out, put them in the resolution.
I would ask the motioner what was in his mind at the moment.
Why don't you tell me?
That would be cleaner.
No.
I think, yeah.
I would ask Dan to either look at it, hearing the concerns, either look at it and pull it, or come back with justification as to why it should stay.
So you don't have any preference, either?
My preference-
A little more research and justification?
My preference would be to take it out because I don't necessarily see it as a pressing need, and there's a path forward for a developer to get through it. They're asking you for a waiver, they've done it. So I don't think it's not causing as an impediment for a development.
Correct.
So I think I would take it out.
I don't think the rest of us would be sad to see this.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dan. All right, we find ourselves in the discussion. No?
Second decision,
Attorney
item number
fees.
7.
Attorney fees,
Oh, yeah.
Lord, yes, because we moved them down from consent agenda.
Yes.
Right, all right. Item number 7 from consent agenda is now been moved to our second decision item, and that is the, Mark, would you like to introduce that item? This is the attorney's fees adjustment.
Sure. As the staff report says, the rates for Cliff and his firm have been the same since 2005 at $190 per hour. Back then, we eliminated a retainer. The actual retainer was moved in 2017, so things have gotten more affordable to us over the years. What Cliff's proposing is new rates of $250 per hour for board certified shareholders and slightly less as you work down with the associates and non-board certified attorneys. The way the charter works is that the city attorney is appointed by the city council, and as an extension of that, this is sort of in your hands in terms of the agreement between you and the city attorney. So that's what the request is tonight.
Okay.
So I just asked to pull this down just for discussion reasons. Since, you guys work for, the council. So I did talk to Martin today about it, and I asked, can you give me what we paid Cliff's company the last 3 years? And it's been anywhere from $95,000 to $130,000. Asking the $50 would be a 25% increase. So I kind of did the math on that. That would bring it up $32,500 a year. So I just wanted to give us all a chance if we wanted to discuss something. If you guys had different ideas, you happy, everything good. Just kind of wanted to bring it out and have discussion if anybody wanted to.
Well, you brought it to the right place because
Yeah, I know. There's 4 lawyers on here, so I thought,
Yeah, I hesitate to bring my outside knowledge into these situations, but I've written a couple of retainer contracts this week, and seems more than reasonable to me. I was like, wow, that was a little right before, and it does say it hasn't changed since 2005, so that would certainly make sense. I know that a concern that was brought to me by a constituent was more about, the fact that some cities have outsourced as we do, and then some have in-house counsel, which we're a fairly small municipality. I presume that's less common in a very small municipality like ours. I hear what Vance is saying about his conversation with Mr. Regaton, which was, I haven't heard that number before right now, but I also know what the going rate for city attorneys is, and I'm sure, assuming with benefits and all of that, I still don't think we're in a crazy place. That being said, I think, to me, that's a separate conversation if someone wants to raise that conversation in terms of council or whatever, if that were a concern of anyone on council. It's not one of mine at this point based on what I'm hearing, but that I think that what we're doing now and what's being asked is from my knowledge, far than the realm of reasonable. And overdue, sounds like.
Right, well, typically, I think it's a reasonable rate. I think if you go to a large firm and you look at, you ask for their banking partner or their development partner or their whatever, those numbers are eye-popping numbers. And, we're going to hear from, it seems to be very reasonable for local government law work to, this rate is not an unusual request, it's not an unusual field, and Cliff has been working to get his firm up with everybody being board certified now, and I guess that's around Vitus. So I would imagine almost all of your guys are.
Everybody who does this work is now board certified. That's Jake, that's Patrick, that's me, that's Drew, that's Andrew. So whoever sits in this chair, they're all board certified. And that's not unimportant. The reason why I insist on it is part of our, if you're going to be a shareholder there, you better plan on taking an 8-hour exam, and you better plan on doing everything else that's required. And it's because I don't want people who we work for to guess whether we know what we're doing. I want somebody to be able to say, they better know what they're doing because the bar says they know, and that's why we insist on it. And that does separate us from the other folks out there that do this.
And I will say that having the perspective that if we were to try and find an attorney to bring in-house that we hire directly, not only are we losing the aptitude and the skill that to pay in that zone, but also the 5 heads are better than one when they go back and actually problem solve as a group rather than us relying on one singular voice to actually try and navigate us through situations. So I think there would be absolutely no reason that I would want to think about going any other direction other than having the expertise of this entire team here.
Yeah, when I did the numbers, I was like, even with the increase, you're still, paying that probably at the end of the day that after insurance and everything else to an in-house person. I just wanted to have the conversation because I don't think it's. Has anybody ever had a conversation before though?
Here, the answer is no, because since 2005, there's no reason to.
Well, I just always like to say, hey, kind of hey, this was your evaluation.
But to your point, I would replace, and there is a tipping point. I don't know where it is. There is a tipping point when a city should look at an in-house lawyer. New England has always felt like, and I think accurately, so it's below that tipping point, although you can find smaller cities that go in-house. But the problem is to get somebody in here that knows enough that they don't have to refer literally everything to somebody who is a specialist in certain areas, it gets crazy. So if you just use as an example, you probably find somebody in the range of 125 to 150 as a salary, but that doesn't include any benefits. And that doesn't include paying for a subscription to Westlaw or Lexis, and it doesn't include malpractice insurance, and it doesn't include having a paralegal or a secretary. And so there's a whole lot of other stuff that goes into it. And I talked about this with Mark. I'm guessing, you can find out, you can call it, we both work here. They're probably paying somewhere between $250 and $300 a year to have an in-house lawyer with a paralegal and all the things I mentioned. And that's not untypical, but they're also the second largest city in Orange County.
Right.
So, there you go.
Cool.
So, is this the engagement that this one says you're going to retain all of our property until we make payment, and then it says...
It says that in all of the agreements, but if that gives you pause...
It's just an interesting one that you're
well,
retaining our property.
they call it an attorney retaining lien, and if you have a contingency arrangement, they have something called a charging lien, and that never applies. So for regular law firms...
I don't know what property in the city you could have.
Paper, that's
right.
literally it.
And then the questions about billing, that was the only other one that I saw in there.
And that has actually been in the agreement that we've had since literally I started in 1998.
So we can complain within 15 days.
And it's, but the reason, let me tell you how that came up. So, because I got asked this question recently. I recently got retained by Ocala. And one of the things that came up was, what's this about? It's because my memory's not good enough. If you call me 60 days from now and say, what did you do on that phone call? Now, I don't remember, you know, and it's hard. So it's really about, I want to be able to give you a good answer. So ask me quick enough so I can, because it's not like this is the only matter I got going on. And that's the reason. So if that bothers you, I'll take it out. It's not going to mean that I'm not going to talk to you. It's just that there's a good, decent chance that after a certain period of time, and you say, why did you write this letter? It's going to take me a while to dredge it up.
Well, it's just on Mark, because if not, he's going to be deemed to have acknowledged that it was awesome, pretty much. Not only was it awesome, it was both accurate and fair.
That's what we try to go
And I
for.
think also the bar likes you to have before, I don't know how it works behind the scenes if there's a trust account situation, but I mean, that's how I structure mine as well, because I have to have some time frame where I'm allowed to transfer it when I hear nothing, which is always.
This is just Bill. It was.
Someone else does that in your firm, right?
I get to read a lot of engagement.
Okay, lawyer party's over. I move to approve.
Public hearing.
Oh, public hearing, sorry, that's right, excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dale.
Welcome to the public hearing on this item.
Yes.
Please.
Consent agenda?
Yes, number 7, this is the attorney's.
Dale McDonald, 108 Angelo Court. Yet again, I've known Cliff for a very, very long time. I've employed him privately and love him dearly. Ain't nobody above review. And we don't do that. We review city manager, we review city clerk every single year. And to my experience, we never review the city attorney. Am I close, Cliff?
The answer is no, but in fairness to the city, I'm happy to be reviewed, but it's because I'm not an employee, and so as a non-employee, where there's not like a form you need to fill out and turn in, but you could. There's no reason you couldn't.
As one of the only 3 positions that a council controls. So, again, we're in a spot where I have believed, I would agree with those of you that wanted to bring this forward. It's worthy of discussion. And there are other municipalities doing in-house attorneys. There are also, obviously, cities not doing it. And I'm not sure there's a right or a wrong answer. But not to have the discussion, I think is shortchanging some of what choices we might have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dale.
I just want to make sure we're paying Cliff the old rate for this extra conversation that we had tonight. Perfect, okay.
Anybody else in the public period? Has a time? Seeing none, let's close the public period. And
I'll second Vance's motion.
Thanks, bud. I make a motion to approve, to authorize Mayor Lowndes to execute the agreement and fee structure as presented.
We have a motion.
And a second.
And a second. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hall Harrison. Aye. Councilmember Warzel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Duffy.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. There you are, Cliff. Thank you. Now we're at the discussion item, Uptown Maitland Lot 2, 125 City Parkway. Mark, either or Councilperson Hall Harrison, either one, unless you have anything to add.
I can just give you a brief update, which is in the staff report. I did reach out to Mr. Jensen day after the last meeting, just to verify a few things. He did confirm that his asking price is $2.1 million for the property. And during our discussion, he indicated that that was a discounted rate to the city. He felt that it actually significantly did discounting the price. So that's where he's at, is $2.1 million for the little over an acre.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
I think, I thank Linda for bringing this up, because I think expanding the parks is always a good idea. This one, though, is just, I feel like the more we talk about it, I think it's not helping our cause, and I think 2.1 is not helping our cause, so I think we should just maybe let this one sit to maybe a more realistic expectation.
No, I totally agree. When this conversation initially came up and Sharon made the initial offer through an intermediary, the concept was that we would make him whole. So that being the idea, it was sort of around the show us your receipts, basically. How much did you pay for the property? How much have you invested so far into the engineering reports? And I can't even fathom if we were to see the receipts that they would be the current offer. So I think at this point, we're not dealing maybe on the same level. So I'm glad we've had the conversation. I'm glad the council was open to at least talking about it, and I appreciate that. But at this point, you know, that's silly money. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, yes, and just to add to it, another factoid is that that property is not unrestricted. It's not just a piece of property in the city. It has already been, it has lost any ability to have any meaningful residential component on it. So it's all the land development rights with regard to residential have been built off that property except for 3 units. So it's not going to go up as a 5-story apartment building. Anyhow, that's just something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, so everybody knows, the property rights, they transferred to 311 right up front, right on civilian 1792, so that's why that land is
That
undeveloped.
the soil doesn't sound like it's very, lends itself to 5-story planter.
Yeah.
That's stuff to a nice park. There are naming opportunities for that park. People want to participate.
Well, the nice thing is it's still a green space.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to reports. Anything, Mr. City Attorney?
The hearing, the next hearing, which I hope, well, I hope it'll be one of the 2 last ones. The last one on anything that has to do with liability, and the last one on attorney's fees. It has been set for December 5th, I want to say. I think we were able to get an hour of time. We tried to get an hour and 15, but that requires a special set short matters hearing. So when we try to squeeze in 3 motions, move to 1 hour. One is the motion for entitlement to attorney's fees, because they actually are saying, don't ask me why, that we're not entitled, notwithstanding what the statute says. They are also, we have a motion for entry of judgment against one of the defendants who is not in the amended complaint. And then the third motion is directed to the remaining claims in the complaint. And when that gets here, we will let you know how it goes.
Okay. Anybody on the council have a report? Enlighten us.
I wanted to share this. So there was a cleanup last weekend, the weekend before, Lake Sibilia. 156 pounds of trash pulled out in a few hours by people in kayaks. So, yeah, so. But hopefully we're going to remedy that soon, so I get a lot less.
Okay. Good. Were you one of the guys in packs?
No, I was not.
Right,
I was not in town again.
Okay. All right. Ms. Wurzel?
Yes, well, one thing was just like a announcement, is that I found out today I was appointed to the Municipal Administration Legislative Committee of the Florida League of Cities. So I'll let you know when I figure out exactly what that means, but in case you need something, municipal administration, you know where to find me. In a public forum, obviously. But also, I wanted to bring up, I think in June, Emily Hanna came from Walk Bike Central Florida. She did a presentation that was unforgettable, particularly the video of the officer risking his life to walk across the street, which I still have questions about. But nonetheless, I had spoken with her beforehand, one-on-one, and asked her to come and give that presentation to all of you, because I think that what the Best Foot Forward program, which is the program for the municipalities within Walk Bike Central Florida, is would be valuable to Maitland. And since that time that she gave the presentation, we've had a couple of notable accidents in Maitland, bicyclists being one of them. And also then, as some of our constituents here tonight pointed out, we've had some crosswalk, not accidents, but just concerns as well. And so given the scope of services and the number of our neighbors, including Apopka and Merritt Park, that are in Castleberry that are involved with Best Foot Forward, I would like it to be added to discussion for our next meeting, the idea of Maitland participating in the Best Foot Forward program.
Okay. Is that participating, mean funding it somehow, or?
There's a fee for funding, so I understand, and there's been some conversation between myself and city staff before about what that means, because I know there's some nuances with it being a not-for-profit, but it is a fee for services. So I have materials that I forwarded to staff that can be forwarded presumably with our agenda for the next time of what that entails, that have been provided by the
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're funded by the Metro plan also.
Yeah, so basically, and again, it's all in the materials that I think will be provided when we have it on the agenda, or anyone obviously could reach out to Ms. Hannah as well on their own, but basically, organizations like Metro Plan as well as Orange County and Seminole County are partners, they fund at a much higher rate. So the municipal partners, I believe it's based on your size, but Maitland is the lowest kind of size in terms of the cost that you pay. So yes, it is subsidized in that way, but Metro Plan is also a partner, yes, as well. So that's one of the advantages from my perspective is the connections to Metro Plan and the counties as well, and the DOT as well.
Right, because they're already working on safe crosswalks, and they're right now we're looking at things like lights. Like if somebody walks out, the light will change like that, so nobody's going to hit somebody. So
the conversation I had with Ms. Hannah was illuminating in terms of, just like anything in any field you're in, the best standards are changing constantly.
Yeah.
So a city can invest a bunch of money in doing whatever is best at that time, and it changes, overnight. But yeah, I think there's a wealth of knowledge and collaboration.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Laura? Mark?
No, sir.
Okay, well, then let's adjourn.
that's a lot faster than I thought it was going to be.
I like it.
Congratulations. On your blah 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 blah.
You know, the great thing is
All right,
all
see
of
you, Mike.
the
See you there.
right? All of the
Yeah.
They talk about like post-doc and stuff, it's all